Hashem, today's Daf Yomi is Menachos Daf Nun 10, Notes, Menachos 59. We're going to start Pedros Hashem Yisbarach on the top of 59a at the Mishnah. The Mishnah discusses the different types of Menachos and it says the Mishnah, Yesh Tuno Shemen Vilavona. Some require that they be mixed with both oil and frankincense. Lavona is the frankincense. That there are some who require shemen v'lo lavona. Some require oil and not lavona. Some are lavona v'lo shemen, frankincense and not oil. And then there are others that are lo lavona v'lo shemen, not frankincense nor oil. So there are four different types. Ve'elo tu'uno shemen lavona. These are the types that require both oil and frankincense. The minchas hasolas, and these are somebody says, I'm going to give a mincha without specifying. Rashi says, he is to bring an isaron, a flour, and he puts on it the oil and the frankincense. And he mixes it together and he takes off a scoop while it's raw. And so that by that explicitly in the Torah it says shemen and lavona. By the others it doesn't say lavona. So we all learn it out from the minchas solas. So the Gemara is going to tell us. Menachos, this is the frying pan one. Menachos is a deep pan. Menachos v'arakikin. If a person says, I'm going to give a minchos that's mafe, that's baked, then it's either the chalos or the rakikin. And so he brings either the chalos or the rakikin. And these are considered two separate minchos, because if he wants, he could bring chalos, which are either that's more mixed with oil, or well, it's one opinion of it, or the other one is it's bigger, whereas the rakikin are thinner, or else the rakikin is just covered with oil on top. And then the minchas kohanim, the minchas kohen Mashiach, and the minchas ovikchov, minchas nashim, minchas omer. These other minchos, the kohens, the kohen gadols, the idolater, if he wants to bring a carbon, the women or the omer, they also require oil and frankincense. But the minchas nesachim, says the Mishnah, that's the mincha that accompanies an animal offering. That's tu'una shemen vein tu'una lavona. That does not have frankincense. It just requires the oil. The lechem apanim, which is the bread that's put on the table on Shabbos and eaten the next Shabbos, that requires lavona vein ta'un shemen. That requires the frankincense, but not the oil. Shtei alechem, the two loaves of bread that are waved on Shavuos, u'minchas chote, u'minchas kenos, the mincha of the sinner and the mincha of the sota woman, ein te'unin v'lo shemen v'lo lavona. They do not require neither oil nor frankincense. Why does the mincha of a sinner not get oil? So the Sefer Chinuch gives two reasons. One explanation is that because the oil represents greatness, because the oil rises to the top, and so therefore the sinner is sinning, so he shouldn't bring the representing greatness. The utensils were anointed with oil. Another explanation that the Chinuch records is because when the sinner brings a mincha, it's because he is poor, because it's a carbon ola v'yored, it's a variable offering, and so therefore we want to have rachmanas on him, and so therefore we say don't have to spend money on the oil. As we saw earlier in our tractate, that really should bring the oil right at the very beginning of our Masechta, but we don't want the chote, the sinner, to be benefiting. But here we say that maybe, but still we say he doesn't bring oil. Amar Papa Kol Hecha de Tanan, wherever we have our Mishnah, Eser Tanan. So Rashi said, meaning to say, Rashi gives two explanations, but the basic one is the one we'll just share now is that whenever you say you're going to give a mincha, you have to bring 10 menachos, eser chalos. That's the assumption. But Rafu came to Rabbi Shimon, or Papa saying our Mishnah is not like Rabbi Shimon, who says mechsa chalos and mechsa kikin yavi, that he can bring half of one and half of the other. He doesn't have to bring 10 chalos. He can bring half of the chalos and half of the rakikin. Our Mishnah is not like that. So we're going inside a brisa, and then we're going to explain the brisa for the rest of the Amud. And you shall place upon the mincha of the omer, you shall place oil. So says the brisa, on the mincha of the omer you place the shemen, but not on the bread that goes on the table. You don't put shemen. You might have said valodinu. We could make a logical argument. Just like the mincha of nesachim, she'ena tu'una lavona just like the mincha of the nesachim, which does not require lavona to una shemen, it does require the shemen. Lechem aponim, the bread that goes on the table, shetau lavona, it does require lavona. Din shetau and shemen, for sure it should require oil. Omer, alea shemen, v'lo lechem aponim. On the minchas omer, you put oil, but not on the lechem aponim shemen. V'stam tawel lavona, and also on the minchas omer, it says you're supposed to put lavona on it. And says the brisa, alea lavona, v'lo minchas nesachim lavona, but the minchas nesachim does not get lavona, but only the minchas the omer. Sheyochim might have thought v'aludinu malachem aponim shenu ton shemen tail lavona. It might have thought just like the lachem aponim, which does not require oil, does require lavona. Minchas nesachim shetuuna shemen eno din shetuuna lavona. Minchas nesachim, which does require oil, for sure should require the lavona. Tamalomer alel lavona v'lo minchas nesachim lavona. So that we learn from the pasuk that minchas omer gets lavona, but not the minchas of the nesachim. And then it says in the pasuk, "V'nasat al Hashem v'samta al lavona mincha he." So what do we learn from the word mincha? So it says the pasuk. It says the brayso Rabos mincha shmini lavona, that the mincha that they brought on the 8th day of the Miluim. It says in the pasuk that they brought a mincha on that day. So that mincha, it says vayiba yom hashmini, and it says mincha b'ula bashamen. So that mincha gets lavona on it. What do we learn from the word he? The 2 loaves of bread that are brought in Shavuos, shelo yitanu shemen v'lo lavona. They don't require either shemen or lavona. So Amar Mar, let's analyze this brayso. Aleh shemen v'lo alechem aponim shemen. So it says in the pasuk v'nasat aleh shemen, which means that the minchas omer gets oil, but not the lechem aponim, not the bread on the shulchan. But why do we have to read it that way? Maybe we could read it just the opposite. Shemen, maybe it means the omer is oil, below minchas kohanim shemen, but the individual kohen, when he brings his carbon, maybe that shouldn't have oil. So the Gemara says, no, minchas kohanim avalei rubuye. So it's logical to assume that the minchas kohanim should have oil. Shekain, he says all these commonalities with the minchas omer. They're both isaron. They're both that amount. They're both in a kli. They are both in a utensil. Rashi says all the menachos require a utensil to knead, but the lechem aponim doesn't become sanctified until you put it into the oven. Rashi says chutz, both the minchas omer and the minchas kohanim take place outside of the Beis Hamikdash. Vitzura, and both of them are disqualified after a day and a night. Look at the Rashi. Kol pasabolina, ve'inachos el yom. Well, it's actually, there's a little bit of a curiosity here in the Rashi. It says ve'inachos el yom v'layla. But the lechem aponim we know is a miracle that it was eaten 9 days after it was baked. And then the next line, kli chutz tzura hagasha, they require bringing it in a utensil to touch the southwest corner of the altar. Me'ishim, and there's a part of it that's burnt on the fire. So the Gemara says, lechem haponim avalei. No, we should say that the lechem haponim has oil. Shekain tzibura, just like the minchas omer, it's a communal. Chova, it's obligatory. Time, it's brought in the state of tumah. Ta'achel pigua, the pigua applies to it because they both have a matirin. The bezikin or the just like the bezikin is the matir for it. Bishabasa, and it can override Shabbos. So therefore, so the Gemara says mistabra. Nevertheless, we want to say that from the word nefesh, it says v'nefesh kitakriv karbin minchal Hashem, that basically it refers to an individual offering. A nefesh is an individual, so therefore it's coming to include the mincha. The mincha, it's coming to exclude the mincha of the lechem aponim, which is not a individual offering. Amar mar alel lavona, well minchas nesachim lavona. Then we say about the minchas omer, it gets lavona, but the minchas nesachim does not get lavona. So the Gemara says ema, but maybe alel lavona, v'lo minchas kohanim lavona. Again, maybe the minchas of the kohanim is excluded. The Gemara says no, mistabra minchas kohanim avalei rabli. No, it's logical to assume that the mincha of the kohanim should get the Lavona, should be included. Shekain, because there's all these commonalities with the Mincha Omer. Isaron, Baul, they're both in Isaron. They're both mixed flour and oil, but with a lug. Mugash, they both have Hagash at the altar. Bigal Etzem, just like the Mincha Omer comes on its own, so too the Mincha of the Kohanim can come on its own. So, but not like the Nesachim. Other rabbis, Gemara says Minchas Nesachim Avodah B'Lev. No, the Minchas Nesachim should be included. Shekain Tzibura, it comes as a communal offering. Chova, it's obligatory. It may be brought in Tumah. B'Shab Asa, it's override Shabbos. Gemara says no. Again, Mistaber Nefesh. It's logical to include the Mincha of the Kohen because of the word Nefesh. Mincha, it says L'Ravos Mincha Shmini Lavona. It comes to include that on the 8th day when they brought the korban mincha, they had a lavona associated with it. Gemara says ve'ema lahotzi. Maybe it's coming to tell us that it shouldn't have lavona. Gemara says no. Hi mai iamras b'shlomo rabo shapir. If you want to say it's coming to include, that makes sense. Eli amras lahotzi. But if you're saying it's just coming to exclude, lamoli, we don't need it to exclude it. Shah midoros lo yafinan. We wouldn't learn it out, this special one-time offering, from something that's typically done. And so therefore it's coming to include, not to exclude. Minchahi, lahotzi shtei alachim, is coming to exclude the 2 loaves of bread that are waved on Shavuot. Shelo yitanu lo shemen v'lo lavona. They don't require oil or frankincense. Ve'ema lahotzi minchas kohanim. Maybe it tells the minchas kohanim doesn't require oil or frankincense. The Gemara says, no, mistaber minchas kohanim, avalei rebliye. No, minchas kohanim should get it. Shekeni Saron, because it has all these commonalities with the Minchas Omer. What are they? They're both in Isaron. They're both Kli. They're both Matzah. They're both Etzem. They both come on their own. They're both Hagasha. They're both Ishim. They're both burned with fire. Other Abba. Whereas it's just the opposite. On top of Nun Tes on the base. No, we should include the 2 loaves of bread in comparing it to the Minchas Omer. Shekain Tzibur, they're both communal. Chova, obligatory. Tamya, they're both Tameh. The Achal Pigua, that if you eat them, you get pigul. B'Shabasa, Matir, that they override Shabbos. Also, there's a Matir, meaning to say the Omer allows the Chadash, the new grain, in the rest of the land, the crops that were planted prior to the crops were planted after Pesach last year, and the 2 loaves of bread allow the new grain in the temple. But the other menachos don't allow anything. And also to Nufa, that the Omer and the Shtei Lachem both require waving. It says Ve'eni Fesa Omer, and by the 2 loaves of bread, it says Ve'eni Fakohen Osam. But the other menachos don't require Nufa. And both have to come from the land of Israel. The Omer and the Shtei Lachem, they only come from the Tvus Eretz Yisrael, as it states that all the karbanos come from the land of Israel and Chutz La'aretz, except for the Omer, and the Shtei Lachem, which can only come from the land of Israel. And Bizman, and also the Omer and the Shtei Lachem, they have a specific time where they have to be brought. The Omer is brought on the 2nd day of Pesach, and the Shtei Lachem is brought on Shavuos. And Ba'aretz, and Chadash, meaning the Omer and Shtei Lachem, they only come from the new grain. It's what it states so that's the halacha. So we see from here that they actually have more. So the Gemara says still mistabra bahani nefishin, and they're more. That there's more of a comparison with Shtei Lachem and the Omer than their Minchas Kohanim, and so therefore we should include the Shtei Lachem for oil and lavona and exclude the Minchas Kohanim. Where it says no, mistabra nefesh. That we see from the fact that it says nefesh, that is adding that this applies to an individual offering. Okay, so now we go on to the next Mishnah. If a person would put the oil on the mincha of the sinner, which it's not supposed to get, then he's going to be liable. Chayev And also alavona b'fnei atma. If he also puts the frankincense on what he's not supposed to, he's going to be liable. Nasan oel Hashem. And if he put oil on the mincha, pasla, he disqualified it. But if he put the lavona, yokatena, he could collect it. Nasan shemen al shireha. Let's say he puts the oil on the remainder part of the mincha after the kometz was brought. Ain't no over b'losasa. He's not going to violate a negative prohibition. It might still be prohibited, but it might still be prohibited to do, but he's not in violation of a law. Nasan kli agabe kli. Let's say he puts one utensil on top of another utensil, and in this first utensil is oil, and he puts on another utensil, which is the mincha of the sinner. Then we're going to say, under those circumstances, well, pasla, it's not disqualified. Tana Rabbanan lo yasimo Hashem, and you're not allowed to put oil on the mincha of the sinner. V'im sam pasal, and if he placed it, it's disqualified. Yachol yiteno el lavona. I might think also we can't put lavona. V'im nasan pasal, and if you put the lavona, it's disqualified. Talmud Omer ki chatas. So it says in the pasuk that it is ki chatas. It says in the pasuk, ki chatasi, it is a chatas. And the implication is that even if you put the lavona on it, it's still going to be considered a chatas. Gemara says, Yachal af b'shemen. So I might think also if you put the oil, it's still called a chatas. Tam omer ki. Only if you put the lavona, it's still a chatas, but if you put the shemen, it's not still a chatas. So the Gemara asks, Nara Isa lifts all b'shemen l'achsher lavona. It seems kind of random. Why are you disqualifying the oil, disqualifying the mincha from the oil, but you're saying if there's lavona, it's still kosher? So the Gemara, the Brisa says, Poso ani b'shemen, I disqualify with the oil. She'yev shar l'lakto. Because once the oil's in, you can't separate it. Maybe with a I don't know, some chemical process today. But in those days, they couldn't. Machshar ani b'lavona, and I'll stay with the lavona. It's okay. She'ev shar l'lakto, because the lavona you could collect, and then it will be. And then it won't have lavona in it. So now we have, and so that's why it will be. It's not disqualified. So by Rabba Barafuna mi Rabbi Yochanan, nasan oel lavona shechuka. Let's say you put lavona that was finally ground, so you can't collect. Mao. So what's the reason why if the lavona is on it, it is not disqualified? Do we say mishum de afshar l'akta? Because you could theoretically collect it, but halo afshar l'akta. In this case, you can't, and so therefore it'll be disqualified. Or maybe the reason why the lavona does not disqualify is not absorbed in. And here it's not fully absorbed in. So the Gemara says, well, let's bring a proof directly from our Mishnah. Tashma v'lavona yokatana, that if you put the lavona on the, our Mishnah says that lavona that you put on the mincha of a sinner, what you can do under those circumstances is you can collect it. You can just gather it up. So we see from here that the whole purpose is that you should be able to gather it up. And if you can't gather it up, you'll be disqualified. Gemara says, no, maybe it's just giving multiple reasons, meaning to say maybe the Mishnah is saying another addition, aside from the main thing, which is it's disqualified. First, the main reason is that it's allowed because it didn't absorb. And furthermore, yokatena, you can collect it, but it doesn't talk about a case where you can't collect it. Tashma, so another price. So it says also in the price, machsharni bilavona. I'll say that if you put the lavona on it, because you could collect it. So Gemara says, no, it's not the main reason. The main reason is because it's not absorbed. And then also, you could collect it. So, my Aviola, what was the way we conclude? Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, Taya minchas chote, minchas kanos, minchas v'sinner, minchas v'sota, woman shenasan ala lavona, that you place the lavona, melaket is lavona ukshira. You could collect it and it's kosher. V'imad shelo likate, and if before you're able to collect everything, lavona sach, he had a disqualifying thought, ben chutz l'zmano, ben chutz l'mkomo, whether it's chutz l'zmano, which is pigel, chutz l'mkomo, which is pasel. And under these circumstances, we're going to say pasel ve'ein bo kares. It's disqualified and there's no kares. the imi shalike levonasa, if after he collected the levona, chishev alea chutzum komo, pasal ve'mukaris chutzum zmano, pigo v'chayav and kares. So we say if he has an improper thought, once he collects it, then it's pigo. But before it's collected, then we're going to say it under those circumstances it wouldn't be possible. So therefore, we see from here. Look at the Rashi. The Ebo Karis, whole Vahaya Bazep Psulachrina, because since while the Lavona is on it, there's a disqualifying other thought, other disqualifying aspect to it, and so therefore the Pigel doesn't apply. Because Pigel only applies when there's no other disqualification. But after he collects the Lavona, Chazer Lachshira, Pigel, then Pigel would apply because it's become kosher. So we see from here that as long as the Lavona is on it, it's disqualified. So we see from here that the whole factor is bilakita tayim elsa. It all relies upon the fact whether or not you can collect it. So if it's so finely ground that you can't collect it, then we're going to say it's disqualified. Gemara says, but why? V'tahave pach. This mincha, while the lavona is still on it, it should be like a thing of oil fell on it, says Rashi, and it wouldn't be appropriate for anything. And so therefore, the machshava stool that'll be on it should not apply at all. Meaning to say that when he gathers it up, it shouldn't be kosher. So too, why is it psula b'machshava? It should be dechuya. It should be like it's totally disqualified. And so therefore, even if he collects it afterwards, it should have been dechoy. So why do we say that if he had the improper thought while it was on it, it's possible? It should be nothing. It should be still okay. The way Tosfos understands the question is, why, with the collecting of the lavona, does it go back to be kosher? Why don't we say that since it was pushed off while the lavona was on it, it's completely pushed off? That's how Tosfos explains it. So Amar Abaye, the reason why it's not pushed off completely is chatas karya rachmana. The Torah calls it a chatas to tell us that it's not pushed off even after you collect it. Rabba Amar Hamani, this is the position of Chanana Mitzri. He says no, that it doesn't get pushed off completely. If you collect it, it's not pushed off. The Tanya Chanana Mitzri Omer, and we saw this we saw this in Zevachim, and we saw this early in our tractate by the goat of the two goats of Yom Kippur. And if one of them died after you slaughtered if the one that was supposed to be sent to exile sent to Azazel died, after the one that was Slayer Hashem was shechted, we say dam bakos. Even if there's the blood in the coast, even if the blood of the slaughtered one was in the cup, maybe chaver shaloba agralo mezaveglo, that you don't have to pour out the cup, you just bring another one. So he says it's not dichoy. Rav Ashi says a different answer. Kol shabiyado, since he could fix the problem, since he was simply able to collect it at this point, then it's not considered dichoy. And Amar Avada, Kavasa de Rav Ashi Mistara, we have a logical assumption like Rav Ashi. The man Shamas the Islay the Chuyin, who says that there's dichoy b'mitzvos? It's Rabbi Yehudi. The Tanah Vodam Rabbi Yehuda, Nishbach Adam Yamas HaMishtalech. He says that if the blood spilled, that you have to kill the goat that was supposed to be sent out, and also Meisa Mishtalech, Adam. So he holds by dichoy. But where he has the ability to fix it, Tanya Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Kosaya, he allows it because we have the bride that talks about the current Pesach. Rabbi Yehuda says Kosaya Mamala Midama Terovos. That in a circumstance, if one of the cups during the Paschal Lamb spilled, Rabbi Yehuda says that since there's a concern that one of the Pesachim would have spilled, and that been poured, and so therefore he didn't fulfill the mitzvah. They used to fill up a cup from the blood that was on the floor, and uzuraka uzrika achatz keneged yisod, and they would pour it on the altar. And even though this blood was dichoy from being sprinkled because it was on the floor, so therefore once he takes it again, he's fixed it, and so therefore, and so therefore. And so therefore we see from here, Kol Shabiyado, we don't say Dichoy, and that's Rabbi Yehuda's position. And we'll stop here today's daf. Baruch Hashem, we'll repeat this at 8 a.m. Shekoyach.